This week we have been speaking heavily on issues youth and actually youth representation. Now, when the government tells you that there's a lot of focus on the youth, then that means that they're looking at the youth from a whole perspective. Other than business, we do know that for business to actually thrive among the youth, then you also have to address the other side of as well, leadership. Because once people are really good or are equipped with leadership skills, then whatever it is that they touch will actually turn into fruition, because even business success is also looked at in terms of leadership. Good. This morning, we are actually going to look at another perspective of equipping youth with knowledge and skills that are actually going to propel them to success within the Kenyan economy. There are a lot of organizations that are actually looking into this. And so this morning, we've been hosting him as our economic analyst, but today he comes here into the studio from on a different perspective, looking at youth issues. Oluoch is in the studio. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good.
Karibu sana.
Thank you.
All right. So I just want us to talk about Africa Youth Leadership Forum,
Yeah.
which I know you're a part and parcel of. You're actually the core of Africa Youth Forum. I just want us to go into it and really know what it is about, all right, and what it's really looking to do within the Kenyan economy.
Africa Youth Leadership Forum
Yes.
is a forum that talks about nurturing a new breed of leaders in Africa. For us, we've sat down and agreed that there is no leader that we can emulate in Africa. And so we decided we are going to emulate one man as a symbol of leadership.
Yes.
Whether you are a Christian, a Muslim, a pagan, a Protestant, whatever you are, whatever religion you subscribe to, we all agree that Jesus is a leader. Not him as a son of God, but Jesus, attributes of Jesus as a leader. That's what AYLF embraces.
Yes.
And so for us, we create platforms and spaces where young people can come together, hold conversations, whole conversation with regards to emulation of Jesus Christ as a leader, not as a son of God.
Yes.
We've adopted models of small groups in universities. Currently, we're in 100 universities. In Kenya, we're in 25 universities. At least we have a small group has at least 15 members that they meet every week.
Yes.
And they talk about contemporary issues. If it's corruption, we sit down today and talk about corruption. And at the end of the discussion, we ask ourselves, what would Jesus have done differently? And then from that, what can we borrow from Jesus with regards to solving corruption? If it's about mental health, for ALF is really just creating that space where young people can come together, vent, young people can come together, hold discussions every week, walk into, for instance, on Thursdays we meet at Luthen Plaza. You'll get a group of young people. There's a restaurant down there where we just sit and drink porridge and just talk about anything.
Yes.
In these universities, at least I know in Riara University they meet every Thursday from 11 to 1 p.m. They sit down and just talk. We don't have we don't have an agenda of what we are talking about, but we just meet to talk. At the end of the day, we realize that peer-to-peer mentorship and that peer-to-peer counseling helps with regards to the kind of leaders we want to see in this country. And so we've adopted the model of small hubs to be centers where we are trying to develop young leaders. LF has been there for 11 years now, and we are in over 6 countries. We're in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, in Congo, in US. We've worked with National Prayer Breakfast. We work with them in organizing National Prayer Breakfast and to see how we can emulate that leadership.
Yes.
So we are structured in 3 ways. We have senior members, we have young professionals, and we have students in universities. At the senior level, you have senior leaders who've bought into the idea of ALF. You have the likes of Mugo Kibati, who's one of our trustees. We have Oluoch. We have a lot of guys who've bought into the idea of ALF, like now Senator Sam Pogisho.
Yes.
Then you come to young professionals. These are guys who finished campus, then where I am, lawyers, whatever.
Yes.
People who can offer mentorship to guys who are still in universities. We're just trying to craft a way of which we are going to get into high schools and try to see how high schools can adopt the model of of leadership.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you're actually now looking into sort of mentoring the youth in the economy now, and also in different schools and universities across Kenya to really understand what leadership is really.
Totally.
So when you look at it yourself, what do you think is the most wanting area when it comes to youth representation in leadership in Kenya? I just want to start from Kenya before we now compare how different it is here in Kenya with other parts of the world.
in Kenya, the youth in this country are disadvantaged
Yes.
at two fronts. One, they don't have mentors to look
Yes.
up to. And secondly, and very importantly, is that in the policy of this government, there's nowhere youths are featuring. Look, for instance, I want to give you an example of this government. It's like you're preparing food from the kitchen. And in this food that you're preparing, you are adding industrialization, you're adding food security, you're adding manufacturing, all those things. You're adding women empowerment, and you're bringing it before us in the table. But you're telling us we've not prepared youths for us to partake, but contents of this water has elements of youth. You cannot hold discussions like that. I mean, it has to be a vision of the government that indeed young people and youth has to be to form part of their policies.
Yes.
The president the other day said that he cannot appoint young people into positions of leadership because he has seen young people embezzling funds. And when he was talking like that, there are young leaders who are sitting behind him who cheered. So it tells you, even a young person who would want to look at an established leader, you cannot do that.
Yes.
Because these guys don't have even your existence
Yes.
in contemplation, where
Yes.
they're doing whatever thing they're doing. And so young people are really disadvantaged at those fronts. Talk, for instance, youth unemployment. A lot of companies that are doing layoffs, they're doing layoffs to young people. And so a lot of young people, we have a youth bulge in this country that the government has not been alive to it. And so what young people are left to do, if it's not betting, is to talk about things that are not progressive. Not because that is what we are being fed, but that is a desperate state that they are into.
Yes.
We are being told about innovation, and young people should come together and look at ways of innovating. But the environment, even in this country, does not promote that.
Yes.
But in our life, we believe in coming together, having those conversations. We've come together and created a cooperative. We've come together and talked about how young people can save.
Yes.
And now we are having structured ways of saving within our foundation. We recently just had a conversation with AMG Realtors on how young people can save into land. And now we are talking about, they are launching a phase, I think from December 7th, on how young
Yes.
people can purchase pieces of land in Nanyuki at 90,000 shillings. These conversations, we'll never have had them if we don't have an organization that has such strategic conversations with these corporates and these organizations.
Isn't it? All right. And another issue that really is very pertinent when it comes to talking about youth and youth leadership is that, Collins, you speak to them every little time, and you actually interact with them on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, even when you go for your retreats.
Yeah.
Therefore, what do you think is also lacking in the mentality of the youth in the country? Because we always cry of misrepresentation, of underrepresentation. But then we never see much action from the youth themselves as well in terms of now pushing the agenda. What do you think is this stifling factor that doesn't really push the youth to actually be there the way they're supposed to be?
Empowerment, to realize that they have so much in their hands.
Yes.
I think young people are not aware of what they have in their hands. We complain so much about underrepresentation, but I don't subscribe to that notion. Because I believe even in Parliament, we are well represented. We are not short of young people in Parliament. But then it will be so important and so beautiful to see that the young people in Parliament are contributing towards great conversations about transforming this country. But that does not come out of that, of the assembly. When you listen to young members of Parliament talking, there's something you can associate them with. It's not like in the past where we had likes of great leaders, great young leaders who will talk and address the floor of the House, and you'd listen to great ideas coming from them. That does not happen in this country. And so young people are yet to come alive to the fact of what they have, be it in their numbers, be it in their powers to vote, and that is rightfully in the Constitution, embedded in the Constitution, that they have right to vote. And if you're displeased with the kind of leadership that you're having, then for us it's easy to get these people out. But then you see young people, the youth are unemployed, and so when the politicians come to campaign, all they ask for is money. And so we won't be alive to the fact that we have a power to remove these guys in office and put the person we want who is going to speak for our agenda. So I think young people need empowerment first to be able to realize the kind of powers that they have.
Yes. Yeah. I like how you're targeting even the ones that are in universities as well.
Yeah.
So now, what sort of conversations therefore really go around the university students when it comes to leadership? But I want to also look at it from this perspective, Collins, that we normally see a true reflection of university politics and university leadership that actually mirrors exactly what we see in national politics when it comes to our government. Well, are you trying to change that? Is that what you're trying to change? Is that yes, we need to give a different picture? Is that the conversation around it, the way that you do your politics and your leadership ventures should be way different from the way your other leaders are doing?
That is what we are speaking at the moment.
Yes.
And we've been able to, as ALF, we've been able to even produce leaders who are now in the national platform. For instance, the Deputy Governor of Kajiado was one of ALF members.
Yes.
We have a number of, at least 7 county assembly speakers from Nyeri to, I think, Thika, who've come from ALF members. For us, we want to change the narrative. As you've rightfully put it out, that we have adopted what we see in national politics. It's unfair. It's not unfair. It's sad to see that we've tribalized and ethnicized politics even at the university level. But we are trying to see how we are working out of this. We've developed models of, for instance, we have a program called USLA, University Student Leaders Awards, that we award student leaders in universities who have great projects. I participated but did not win. You have to bring your idea and the project that you're doing in your university. It's not just about being a leader. And you know, university students, leaders have this ego that they think, after this, I'm going to join politics. And that is so myopic of them. And I'm speaking because I was once one of them. Yes. That we are so myopic to just believe that after our tenure and after our stint as student leaders, we want just to see ourselves there. But we don't know how to get there. That is one of the realities. Yes. So ALF came with a structured way of having university unions come together, and just how we have one dignified university union that can speak into matters and employment, can be a voice in this country. Yes. But then when that was being rolled out, it's just sad that it was ethnicized at one point with the functions that came up with one of our student leaders who now is a member of parliament, and they broke that conversation that we are having that was progressive. Yes. But that is what we are aiming at. We want to transform the kind of politics that we are seeing at universities. And now even we've realized high school students are watching what is happening in the universities, and they can't wait to come and do the same. I've seen in the dailies how student leaders are spending close to 13 million to campaign.
Isn't it just to campaign?
It's to campaign.
Think about it, Collins. It's because that's exactly what we see in national politics, isn't it?
Totally.
It's just a true mirror of exactly what we see here. Mm-hmm. And now they're just waiting to go there and actually now sort of actionalize it just immediately.
Totally. But then you ask yourself, where does a student leader, where does a student get 13 million to spend in a campaign? It tells you they are puppets of someone. There's someone who is sponsoring this. Yes. They are stooges of people that once you get there, help us to see how we can get tenders from universities. How you get there, help us to see how you can rally your students to be singing to me. And until we disconnect monetization of politics in universities, we're not going to dissociate the kind of leadership you're seeing in the national politics and the kind of leadership you're seeing in the universities. Yes. But that is a type of conversation that we are at the stage of. Yes. We are now developing policies and a structured way of seeing how we can have an institution of student leadership that is progressive. That we've had university student leaders who have been leaders for 7 years and they're still leaders, even way after they are done with their degrees. And so this kind of clout and, I don't know, egocentrism that student leaders are having is what we want to delink from them. And that is, I think that is what ALF speaks to.
Yes. I just want us to talk about now that you know the global perspective of exactly what our youth here are now looking forward to or to be. When you compare where the Kenyan youth is versus other countries in the region as well as the globe as well, what do you place us? Are we there yet in terms of representation, in terms of actually being part and parcel of the decisions that every government makes?
We are not there. But not all is lost. I'll give you an example of what happens in the US. Yes. This is what happens in the US. And we've been there and we've seen how these processes are happening. That there are times where the student leaders in the US are taken to the parliament. Yes. When they are taken there, we have a structured way of mentorship where these politicians sit down with them and they sort of just advise them one-on-one, not just a conference where you come and someone speaks to you 500 people and after that you are like, let us take selfies and you're done. No, we have a structured way of how these leaders are interested in the future of young people. Yes. Either in the US and in other countries that are progressive. In this country, I don't think they are interested that much in our future. They're interested in our numbers. And they're interested in how they can transform our numbers into their votes and how they can transform our numbers and our pockets into being their people and just being their stooges and puppets. Yes. Just how we can sing to them. But with regards to involvement of youths even in coming up with agendas of this country, I mean, as I've said, we are not there fully because we have representation of, for instance, we have a nominated member of parliament who is representing the young people, Gideon Ketret, a very close friend of mine. Yes. But then beyond that, we're not seeing how these other young people can be brought on board. And I don't blame the leaders. I blame the lack of a structured way of even involving young people. And that's why we are saying if we can be able to come together and have a structured way of how unions are institutionalized in one place, that you can say, if we want to consult with matters regards to employment, we can get representation from this pool. If you want to consult with matters what, we can get from this pool. That's what we are lacking, an institutionalized system of how we can reach out to people.
Yes.
But then with regards to nomination of young people in parliament, we've seen that happening. But then the kind of conversations that are even coming out of these leaders, I mean...
You find that it's actually just a contrast from whatever it is that they're supposed to do once they get there.
Totally.
It's been 11 years. It's been 11 years. It's been, I would like to think it's been a roller coaster. You've actually now started impacting some areas when it comes to the youth leadership forums in this country.
Yeah.
I want to tell you, what have you observed for the past 11 years, or for the years that have actually been part of the Africa Youth Leadership Forum?
I mean, every year is just a new year, new challenge, new things that we are not ready for. But in the period of 11 years, I mean, we have a track record. There are a lot of outfits that are coming out trying to speak to youth leadership, and a lot of outfits that are coming out trying to engage young people and try to bring them in places. I laud their efforts. Yes. But then there are others that are not honest, and I won't speak to that. But for us, we've been able to we have a track record that we can trace where our people are, that you are... you know, and it's very hard for you to disconnect yourself from AOLF. I cannot say I used to be a member of AOLF when I was in campus. You cannot say that, because it forms part of your DNA. That it's something you move with. When you leave campus and you get to be a young professional, it's something you move with. Yes. When you leave being a young professional and get to be a senior friend, it's something that we can see it, and we can say, okay, this one holds our virtues, this one speaks to what we are speaking. We want just to, even if we'll be counted to be few, and say, okay, these are people that we believe are leaders enough that we can emulate. That is what we are trying to stand for. As I've said, things are changing. Is that the conversation we had 4 years ago in a small group are not the same conversations that we can have now. Yes. For instance, rate of suicide has now increased so much that it has become a national issue. That the kind of... there's a lot of frustration and pent-up anger that young people are having, that they don't have forums and outfits to let out all these frustrations that they have pent up in them. And so now that is what we're trying to fill the gap for, that we've realized there is lack of mentorship, that in the past we didn't think mentorship really for young people was a thing. We thought meeting together and speaking about leadership, meeting together and just, but now we see a sense into why we need to hold these people's, to hold their hands and walk with them through this journey. Yes. That wasn't there like 4 years ago. So every year has new challenges. But what remains is how we have not been able to fully reach out. Our vision and our idea was to cover all universities. At the moment, we're just in 25 universities. And now we are rolling out a policy on how we want to go to all high schools with the models of clubs and adopting leadership clubs in universities, in high schools, and see how these young people at a high school level can interact with the kind of leaders that they want to see. They say if you want to change a nation, change its children first. And so it will transit to everyone. And so we are just trying to see how we roll out all that. But then we don't have resources enough to do that, because at the end of the day, we're just a trust that we don't have a lot of money that we are generating even by ourselves. Yes. That's why we are trying to come up with programs to see that we're able to roll out some of even supporting these small groups. Yes. As I've told you, they meet every week. And when they meet, they require a cup of tea. And so we sponsor that as a AYLF. We see to it that these 25 universities that are meeting, that they have a coordinator, they have an assistant coordinator. At least every month we support them. We see that they can meet today and have a cup of tea and just have conversations, not a structured conversation, so that it's even easier for them to meet tomorrow. That they can meet together and say, today let us try and plant trees. We come in and try and support that. But then we are coming from a point that constant giving and not receiving makes us to be sort of stifle our programs. Yes. And so we are just we are having conversations on how we can be sustainable. Yes. We don't have offices. We are hosted by Ungwana Africa at in Kileleshwa. And so even we're having conversations even how creating a center for ourselves. We're having conversations on how young student leaders can have a direct mentorship with the parliament. Not just to attend parliament proceedings and sit as spectators, but after that to... there's a time we were taken to parliament, I think in last year but one. Yes. and it was a National Youth Week, and we had the speaker there of the Senate, and we were having conversations as young people, and we made great contributions to the floor of the House. After that, we've never seen anything followed up. For instance, one of the things that we proposed was that even for companies that are being taxed twice, that a company that employs a certain percentage of youth should be taxed less. Such conversations have never even gone forth after that.
Yes,
so we need to have structured ways of even following up with contributions that we are making as young people to these office holders and office bearers.
I just want you to paint for me a picture when it comes to a proper youth representation within the economy. What would you want to see happening in Kenya when it comes to leadership and business that is driven by youth?
For me, it's youth leadership to me is not just about leaders, young people being in politics and political offices. For me, it's young people being in all sectors. That we can hold conversations about young people not being shy from investing in agriculture, young people not being shy from occupying these offices in corporate sector.
Yes.
How we can have it easy for even young people to access the market, young people to invest. For instance, there was a time we were saying that young people, there should be a system where the government, if the government is honest enough and they want to promote young people in this country, where, for instance, young people are taxed less. For if they are doing agriculture, they have tax waivers.
Yes.
Saying for 2 years, if it's a young person who is starting an SME, for the first 2 years they are given a tax waiver. They are not allowed to pay tax. We're saying that if it's a young person who is importing agricultural products, for the first 2 years, it's free for them.
Yes.
Such a system that you're saying, if it's a young person, if it's books that young people are buying, let books be tax free, because it's knowledge that we're investing in our young people. But then you see, the government is not working towards that. It's working towards how they are taxing EABL, how they are taxing betting,
turnover tax 3% introduction.
And you see such things now.
Yes.
It's what now the young people will be invested in.
Yes.
Interested in. Charles, before we finish, out of lack of resources for LLF, we are now having a mountain climbing from 21st to 27th, and I've volunteered myself to go and climb Mount Kenya to raise funds towards supporting these small groups. As I've told you, I am so passionate about these small groups because of the kind of transformation that happens at those hubs.
Yes.
The other day, I think last month, I was privileged to have a conversation with the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, and he was telling us how during the time that there was war in Ethiopia, how they retreated back to the forest and the caves, and they formed small groups of people, of 5 people. Yes. And in those small groups of 5 people, they were able to have conversations and have how to transform the country, and they were honest with each other and being naked with each other. Not physical, naked with each other with regards to their conversations. Yes. That is the kind of conversations that happen at the small group level, that people can come and be vulnerable towards each other. A small group of 15 people, and you're just vulnerable to each other, that you know what I'm going through, I know what you're going through, we know what is my shortages, and I know what is your strength. That kind of mentorship, at the end of the day, we need each other. And the kind of conversations that happen in those small groups and are just so transformational. And so I believe by climbing the Mount Kenya from 23rd to 27th, I can be able to raise resources towards supporting these small groups in the next 2 years or so. Even also on 7th December, we are hosting a dinner at Lyco Regency, just trying to raise funds towards supporting LLF programs in the future.
Yes. Yeah. Collins, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
All right. Now you do know exactly what it takes to be part and parcel of youth processes and youth representation and youth accountability within the economy. Good, that's exactly what we have for you this morning. More of this conversation and more on the Africa Youth Leadership Forum. I believe you can actually just log into the website and actually get to learn what they do, and then after that you can be part and parcel of the conversation as well, and also change. They say if you want to change the youth or the country, you have to start with the young population, and that means the youth. Good. From Metropole TV Business AM Studios, that's it. Richie, take over.